Welcome to another episode of Handi Quilter's Watch and Learn. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you can get some more quilting content. And today we are going to be talking about repositioning. So make sure you stay tuned because we've got lots of great tips for you. I'm Kristina Whitney, a studio educator here at Handi Quilter, and we have...
I'm Kim Sandberg, a studio educator also here at Handi Quilter.
Okay, Kim, repositioning.
I know. This is the #1 phone call we get, right?
Exactly.
Help, I'm using my Pro Stitcher. My design is not where it's supposed to be. Help me reposition, right?
Exactly, yeah. So sometimes you get a motor error, or you have to stop quilting in the middle of something, or you accidentally touch the screen and move your design somewhere else. I've never done that before.
Never.
And you need to get that reconnected to where it should be in position compared to what you're actually quilting.
Exactly.
I think one of the big key things with this is helping people to understand on their Pro Stitcher screen, the orange crosshair, that represents their needle. So you're not going to try to get that crosshair or your needle off to a design that might be off in La La Land.
Right.
Your goal is to get that design that's off in La La Land over to your crosshair, which is, again, your needle position.
Exactly.
So getting that initial concept will save you a lot of frustration in the end.
Absolutely will.
Kim, you've already stitched out a couple rows on this design.
I have.
And okay, there's an emergency. You've got to go pick up your daughter at school because we've never had that happen.
Ever.
Life of a mom.
Always. While I'm quilting.
Okay, and you're not going to be able to get back to it tonight. So you've got to shut down your machine. So let's show the viewers how we can get this ready to make it easier to find our positioning when we turn the machine back on.
Exactly. So luckily I was able to finish this row, so you guys can see I've quilted over to here. I went ahead and cut my crosshairs, cut my threads. They're crossing each other. That's what I've done. And what I'm going to do now is looking at the screen. And this is one of the things that we want to talk about. Really pay attention to when we say, okay, at this point you look at the quilt. Now at this point you look at the screen, because depending on what you're doing depends on where you need to be looking. So I am looking at the screen right now, and I am moving over to where that next start point will be. So if you look there on, oops, we can tap that there. Perfect. Okay, so my crosshairs, it's okay, we'll tap it twice and turn it back on. So I have moved the crosshairs to right where that start point is, looking at the screen.
Let's move that crosshair real quick so they can see, because I kind of covered it.
There we go. So
Let's
there's the crosshairs coming
there
in there. I'm moving it to that green jump point right there, and I'm putting it right in the middle. I could even zoom in if I wanted to, but this is good for right now. Now I'm going to look at the quilt. So looking down here at the quilt, I have this lined up, and I can see that in conjunction with my other design. I'm going to just put my needle down. And there's a couple of different ways you can mark this. You can put your needle down, just leave it down, go ahead and shut down your machine. Or if you don't want to leave the needle down, so I put this down like that, I'm going to go ahead and pop my needle back up. I can see where that spot is, and then Kristina's actually got the pencil here. And she's just going to go ahead and mark. As I pull away a little bit, she can see right where that point is. She's going to mark that, and then I can just move the machine away, and I know right where I'm going to need to start in the morning.
And I've heard of people that will just put a pin in there, or any way that you can mark that spot. I know I had one person that put like a piece of painter's tape there, and then they took the machine and did the needle down, needle up, and so they had that exact spot on there. Lots of options. Just get that spot marked somehow.
Exactly. So then the next morning I come back, and I of course remembered to save my design. So I'm opening it.
So let's close down the one that we've got there.
So I'm just going to close what I've got there. I come back the next day. I did choose to save mine under a workspace. So I'm going to do my File tab, Workspace, and it's my very first one here, Clams. And it opens up. Now you'll notice that this has the area with it. I don't need the area on the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is clear my area. So Area tab, clear.
Is that necessary?
It's not necessary, but Sometimes it's a little confusing having an area hanging out on the screen when you're not going to use it.
Correct.
So,
because we're going to drag that design out of that area so that it matches what we've already quilted.
Exactly.
So the area, it can go away. It's not going to affect anything.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so the next step is looking at the quilt. So notice we're looking at the quilt now. We're going to move the machine back to right where that mark I had was. And I'm going to do a needle down and put my needle down there. So that and I accidentally, sorry about that, I accidentally put an area point because I had my area tab. So I put my needle down there so that as I am touching things on the screen, I don't accidentally bump my machine out of the way. It's not necessary to put your needle down, it just helps you hold your place a little better.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing I need to do, this is really, really important. I'm gonna go to the Pro Stitcher tab and I need to move my start point down to that third row because that is where I wanna start stitching.
Okay.
Pro Stitcher tab, new start and end, as you see there, here in the sidebar, I'm going to use down here under jumps, I'm going to tap this down button twice. So now you can see my circle, if I can get my to cooperate, it's right there in the middle of that circle. So now I have my start point at the correct spot.
Okay, so you jumped that start point to the row that you've already marked the start point.
That I want to start on.
Okay.
So I did that one. My next step is to go to my Modify tab and choose Reposition on the ribbon. And this is really where we're going to spend our time today, talking about start point. So this is where it's super simple. I know that my crosshairs on the screen correspond with where my needle is on the quilt. That's where I want to put the start point of this design. So I'm just going to tap this start point button and it pops that design right there.
Perfect.
Easy peasy.
And the best part is it's in position and you already have your start point on the correct row.
Exactly.
So at this point, you're ready to stitch.
Exactly. All I need to do is lift my needle and go to Pro Stitcher tab, quilt, and run. That's all I need to do. But we want to show you some other ways to reposition. So that's one way to reposition with a start point. Now, Kristina, you're going to show us another way to reposition with a start point for a design like this also.
Yes.
So let me first help you out here.
Okay, and for those of you that were watching, Kim just took her finger and we've got select turned on. And so she just touched that design and dragged it away.
Yep.
So you can move your design as much as you want.
As long as you have select chosen in the workspace tools.
Let's say your machine or your design is so far away from your crosshairs that it's ridiculous. If you want to bring it closer, you can just touch on that and drag it over closer. That's just one little tool. That's to get it in the ballpark. That's not going to do any of the fine tuning.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so another way that we can reposition this, I'm going to zoom back in a little bit here.
Okay.
You, Kim, left your tails from previous rows.
So I didn't clip these, and this is actually something that I always do when I'm doing an edge to edge. I always leave my tails on my start points nice and long so I can easily find them if I need to use them.
I'm going to have to start doing that. I'm just obsessed with snipping threads and like playing chicken with the machine that I always jump in there and have fun.
My other thing is these are usually out, the long threads are usually out just in the batting. I'm going to trim it off anyway when I get done quilting, so I figure why cut it twice when I'm just going to trim it away. So I'm all about efficiency. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to close this one down. So I'm going to close the selected.
Okay.
And we're just going to move this. So I'm going to bring it in fresh, like we're starting up from in the morning. So again, same thing that you did before. File, workspace. Then my most recent was my clams. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my area. Now, you'll notice that again, my start point is at the first row.
Right.
My first row is still accessible up here on the quilt top.
It is.
So I can move my crosshairs over. Now again, I am looking only at the quilt top. I'm making sure my needle is right on that start point. And now I'm going to look at the screen. And I can reposition it now. Because see, I want this start point to line up with my crosshairs.
Right.
So I'm going to go to the Modify tab, Reposition, and if I hit that start point button, same as what you did, but it's going to take that first row, line it up with the first row I've already quilted.
Right.
With this instance, I need to now jump that start point down so that when I do start to quilt, it will quilt the correct row.
Right.
So this is just a different order
right.
than what you did on yours.
Exactly.
So if you forget to mark the next row, this is another way to do it. Okay, so I'm going to pro stitch your tab, new start and end, and again under the jumps, I want to be on my third row, so I'm going to jump down to the second row, to the third row, and now I'm ready to quilt.
That's perfect. And it's really important to remember to jump down to the beginning of that correct row. Otherwise, you might run into some poles.
Yeah. Just think about any time that you hit that run button, the machine wants to go to the green start point, the circle with the X through it. Not necessarily the one that is in your mind that you want it to go to.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so that was two different ways.
Yeah. So the next way that we want to talk about, I'm actually going to pull the machine over here.
Yeah.
So
and let's mess up that design. Let's get it out of position.
I'm gonna do a little something here and get this way over out of the way. Okay, so let's talk for a minute about advancing your design with edge to edge. So there's a video on ProStitcher.com already that is edge to edge with drag and drop. And in that one, we actually drop the needle and use the drag and drop to advance the design. So if you want to see how to do that, you can watch that video. But you can actually do the same thing without dropping your needle. And this is one of Kristina's favorite ways to reposition designs. So she's going to walk us through the steps of how to do that with the design we have here.
And it's super easy.
It is super easy.
This is probably one of the the repositioning tools that you can use in almost any situation.
I totally agree.
Because sometimes your start point's not available to you. It's already rolled up or you forgot to mark it.
Yeah.
So this way, it's, I don't want to say fail-proof because somebody's going to manage to fail it and then I'll be wrong. But it can be used in any situation.
It's just really easy and effective to use. So Kristina, walk us through the steps.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to find a point, and I like where like two lines cross or you have a sharp point rather than, you don't really want to use this for a curve.
Right.
So I want to find a spot that I've already quilted on. So I'm going to say I'm going to do the bottom of this spot right here.
Okay.
And I'm going to put that in my mind.
Okay. So looking at the quilt first, we're going to pick a point.
Yep. And I'm just going to scoot this over here so that I can reach stuff.
Okay.
Now, that point I'm going to find on the screen.
Okay.
It's way far away from my crosshairs, so
Yeah,
I'm going to just touch it and drag it over, kind of in the ballpark.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to refresh so we can see it.
Very nice.
So what I want to do now is find that corresponding point of what I've already quilted on the screen. So I'm only looking at the screen right now.
Okay.
And I'm going to move those orange crosshairs to that same spot. And I think it's this guy right here.
I think you're right.
And I'm going to hit my zoom button. And I'm going to zoom in and get this accurate as I can. Only looking at the screen here.
Yep.
Okay, when I am happy with that, I've got that needle on that spot that I picked. I'm going to hit the drag button.
Okay. And you just did that in your quick access tools.
I did. And if you don't have it in your quick access tools, you can go to Modify, Reposition, and it's over here. So you'll notice it's activated in both places.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so I hit that drag button.
Okay.
I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so everybody can see what happens. As I move that machine, look at the design.
It moves with your crosshairs.
It has attached my design to my crosshairs. So what I want to do now is looking at the quilt, I'm going to move the needle over to that spot that I chose at the very beginning there.
Yep.
Line it up. When I'm happy there, I'm going to hit the drop button. And let's refresh. And now I'm repositioned.
Exactly. That's perfect. So. And it's the trick is just finding that point on the quilt.
That you can get the machine to.
First, then do everything on the screen. I think that sometimes, especially on phone calls with people, we get kind of confused sometimes about where we should be looking. So find the point, find it on the screen, then looking at the quilt, match the two up. And it is, it's awesome. I know that if I happen to accidentally bump something, and undo doesn't work, because it's been a little too far or whatever. That's one of my favorite ways to do it.
Yep. So that's drag and drop without putting the needle in, and you can use it anytime to reposition.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So let's talk about, let's show another tool that we can use with reposition, and that's the nudge buttons. And a great place to use this is when you're doing an edge to edge like the one we have here that's stitched out. This is actually a design from Quiltable, and it's called Clamorama number 7 Diamonds. And I love, they have a whole collection of these. They're so fun.
Yep.
But this is a design that every time you advance it, you want to make sure that this little point right there is touching the top of that clam below it. So when you're quilting within the throat space, everything's going to line up. But after you've advanced it, you might need to go in and do some fine tuning because it might be off by just a little bit. So let's walk through the steps of how to do that. So if I've just advanced my quilt, we'll say that I've just advanced my quilt using either one of the drag and drop methods. What I'll do is I'll find a spot that, looking at the quilt, that's close to the center of the quilt. Okay.
So not the far left, not the far right, but the center.
Close to, and close to the center. You'll actually notice that I'm a little bit more to this side, but that's okay. I just want to be close to the center. I am going to drop my needle on the design right where I want that stitch to line up. Then once again on the screen, I'm going to use the zoom, and I am really going to zoom in tight on this one so that you guys can see there. You can see that I'm just a little bit to the side of that actual point. I'm going to use the nudge buttons, and Kristina and I are both going to make sure that we're not leaning against the poles. We are going to nudge this design so that it is just lined up exactly, if I can look at my things here.
And you can change that increment number on those also if you want it larger or smaller.
But look at that right there.
Perfect.
Perfect. Now at this point, I will go ahead and zoom back up. I will lift my needle and then move it over to the side, and I'm ready to start quilting. And I know that as I start quilting those clams, those points are all going to touch all the way across. So that's a little kind of a pro tip. Another way to use reposition to make sure that, especially when you have designs that stack close to each other, they quilt out correctly. I actually had that on this quilt. So this is a quilt I just finished for one of my nephews who just graduated from high school. I told him that his quilt would be on one of the episodes of Watch and Learn, so he's pretty excited about it. But this design actually stacks right on top of each other. And there's lines there that just line up exactly straight together. And I used this method every time I would advance. I would pick a point towards the center of the quilt, and then I would make sure that those lines lined up perfectly after I advanced it, so that it would stitch out exactly the way it needed to. I did really great going all the way down, and on the last row I got a little impatient, so it's a little bit off, but you know, that's okay. It's not a show quilt.
Yeah. Just another thing to throw in there with that is sometimes when we advance, some people put a little bit more pressure on one side than the other. So I always recommend checking a couple places in between each row just to make sure that it is all straight still.
Yes.
Because if you let one side shift just a little bit, then it might be on at the beginning, but by the time you get to the end, it might be off a little bit.
It might be off a little bit. And we're talking with the fabric kind of moving from side to side here. Just remember though, once you do that little reposition in the center, if you go over to the far side and reposition, it's going to be off over here. That's why we recommend doing the reposition right in the center on the screen. That way it's most likely to be on all the way across.
Yeah, because you get a little bit of draw in as you're quilting, so.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kim,
what's our next one to talk about?
What is left on the reposition?
Okay, so we've got a couple of other buttons here let's talk about. So this first one is this current button right here. And I'm trying to see if, okay, it did pop over there. So current is when you are in the middle of actually stitching and you pause, you hit pause, you end up with that little gold bullseye, and that's your current point. So you can use that one to reposition at that point. We also have center over here, which centers the design. If you guys saw that on the screen, if I move it over here, actually I have to hit my select again. Remember to hit select if you want to actually move the design. So if I move the design and I tap center, it's actually going to center the design on the crosshairs.
Okay. Key point right there.
Yeah.
Most of these repositioning tools are all in relationship to the needle position.
Exactly.
So you don't need any areas. It's just wherever your needle happens to be, that's what it's looking for.
Exactly, exactly. We already talked about drag. The 0 point, this has to do with the way a design is originally created. And there are not actually a lot of designs out there where the 0 point is going to do a whole lot for you. There are some collections from quiltable.com that if you use that 0 point, it will pop all the designs where they need to be. And you can actually go to quiltable.com to check out. They have instructions on how to make that magic happen with those designs. So there's that. Our next ones are our quadrant buttons, and these ones are kind of cool. They really are kind of cool. So Kristina, do you want to kind of explain how these ones work, and I'll clear and open this other block.
So I had a great conversation with one of our field educators, Susan Manreed, just last week, and she was talking about how she explains, you know, when you're back in junior high math and you're doing stuff on graphs and you have like the 4 different quadrants.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing on the Pro Stitcher.
Oh.
So if you look at, can you pull back up that repositioning screen?
Modify. Okay.
So if you look at those different quadrants.
So I'm going to zoom out here. You can see I've got a block on the screen. This is called Rush Hour, and it's a design that's available from Quiltable also.
Yeah, so if you were to put the, let's say the top left quadrant, you can see that that needle position's in the top left. So it drops the design into that bottom right quadrant.
Right.
Okay, if you try, just go ahead and hit all the buttons. Let's see where it goes
I'll
to.
hit top right.
Top
it puts the top right corner of the design at the needle.
Yep.
And bottom left and bottom right.
Okay.
Now,
and I want to emphasize, this isn't the start point of the design or the end point. It's just your area of what would be around, like your bounds. The furthest left, the furthest bottom, furthest right.
Yep.
Furthest, whatever the other one was that I didn't say, left.
Yeah.
Okay, so this example here, we've got this block that's already stitched out.
Yep.
And we've also stitched out the area, which would represent like an actual quilt block, like a piece block.
Yep.
So if Kim takes the machine and puts the needle in the top right corner.
Like that.
Okay.
So I've just dropped my needle there.
And then on the Pro Stitcher screen, she's going to hit top right.
That is just place that block exactly where, and if I zoom in here, you will all be able to see this. So if I move my crosshairs down to the center of the block looking at the quilt, on the screen, I'm also correspondingly on the center of my block. It's placed it there.
Yep.
So using this quadrant is really great if you're placing designs around a specific point. I will often use this really just to kind of get the design in the ballpark of where it needs to be. And then I will zoom in and use my nudge buttons to maybe get it a little more precise. Is that?
Yeah, that's fabulous. A lot of times also if I'm setting up an edge to edge and I've created the whole edge to edge, but I didn't get to do any stitching, instead of going in and repositioning it with, you know, start point or whatever, because I don't necessarily know what the start point is, I will move my machine to where I would do my original area.
That top left corner, right?
Yep, and then I just hit top left and my edge to edge design is in position.
Is right there. I like that. That's a really great one. I know one of our national educators, Chris Souza, and I did an HQ Live, actually, and he actually talked about how he uses that in his edge to edge quilting all the time. Using that top left and just using that simple position to get it in place. So repositioning is, they're such awesome tools. They help you get those designs lined up perfectly. And I feel like sometimes for a lot of new people who are new to Pro Stitcher, once you completely understand the concept of repositioning, it's like you've got it. And from there, the rest of it's just the fun stuff, right?
Exactly.
Lots of fun.
Well, thanks for all the great tips. Hope that we helped you guys out. And remember, you can go back and watch these videos over and over again so we can walk you through each one of these step by step. But try out all of these different tools and have fun quilting.